Hello, Mr. Ryan.
Hello. How are you, Zach?
I feel like I'm a lot crisper today.
You look crisper today.
You know what's interesting is I think one of the bad things about an Apple computer is that they last so long that you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to like get a new thing, like a new computer. Kind of like the phone. Like last year, I had a phone. I had an 8.
Oh,
Last
you
year,
went
I
from an 8
upgraded
to a 16?
to a 15.
Oh, 15.
And it's really interesting because I feel like these products just last for so long that you don't have to update that. That's a fantastic thing. So
Right.
I still have it literally right here. I have a 2015 Apple that was not broken in any kind of way. Still working strong, still working fine. But here we are now. We got a 2024, November 2024 MacBook. Obviously, the camera looks good. It's faster. So it makes me think like, how often should one actually update their stack so that, because some people like, you probably get every new phone, every new watch. Are you
No,
that?
well, I used to, but I started skipping. So
Okay.
I'm on a 15, and
So I actually don't like this phone. I don't think it takes the greatest of photos. I don't
hmm,
think it's as crisp as I anticipated it. And so I've actually considered going to a 16. Maybe I'll do it at 17. But I mean, it's the 15
well,
Pro. It should be fine. It takes great
camera-wise,
pictures.
I'm just glad that the world is able to see you as good as you truly are. Yeah, like the world needed that.
We did. The Rock's been looking at me. Um, Speaking of The Rock, no, we don't have to talk about him. He was on wrestling this week, but
Mm.
big news.
I
John
saw that
Cena.
he topped out the year as the highest paid actor. 88 million or something is what his
Wouldn't
earnings
surprise
were.
me. Well, that red, what was the Santa
Oh, the
movie?
Netflix movie.
Red One. Great, great Christmas movie. But, it's good to see you. Thought you'd
It's
be a
good to
little bit
see
more
you.
tan, but whatever. You're not.
Yeah, I'm fresh off a trip to Maui, so I feel good.
Do you? I mean, are this the jet
I'm,
lag over?
I don't know, man. I tried to stay up as long as I could last night. That was about 6:30, and then I dozed off on the couch.
I was gonna say I looked at to text you at something like 7:20, and it said notifications or whatever. And what do you put there? Like, hey, don't text me type of thing. Do not
I don't
disturb or
know,
whatever,
but
whatever that thing is.
I ended up responding to your text, and I hit the delay send. I was doing that at like 11:30. I woke up at 11:30, totally ready to go. But
Okay, well, I don't sleep with my phone, so
yeah,
so today we are delighted to have an individual not wearing a black T-shirt. Clearly, like, come on, Mark Coster, we told you
I
that in
missed
the
the
show,
memo.
and it was in the memo that I sent you last week. It said wear a black T-shirt, play a part. That is a stylish looking chair that you have sitting there, ergonomic, I guess. Like, what? How did you decide to buy that chair?
Uh, an
boy,
ad
Zach's
on the
coming out with
internet.
the tough questions early.
Oh, you
Well,
got to like make it easy.
yeah, during COVID, I was just like sitting at a computer desk for so long, each day on video calls, just back to back for like 10, 12, 14 hours a day that my back started hurting. So I had to get a
Mm.
fancy chair. I'd like never used the headrest
That
thing
was
though.
my
I
next
don't,
question. Do you actually
yeah.
like do the lean back, a lean
I,
back?
I got it on stiff mode. I can't go that far back.
Mm.
Oh wow, okay. How
So did
often?
did it did it help your back?
Yeah,
It has helped actually. Yeah.
like how quickly do you see an ad and then buy from it? Because I'm not one of those type of people that does that. Usually, it's from someone else telling me about something, and I can only think of a handful of things that I've ever seen as like a direct ad to me
Yeah.
that I bought. So is that something that you?
If I get an ad, it's probably because I've been looking for like 6 months for the exact right deal where it's now, 80% off clearance or something. That's my MO. In my family, people, whenever they want to buy something that's like even remotely expensive, they'll just ask me to keep an eye out for a deal on it. So
Same, same.
Yeah,
that's
it was nuts, and I know that this shouldn't surprise anyone, but it surprised me a little bit how quickly, as soon as I landed in Maui, like when I did pop into Instagram, how quickly the ads shifted to just
It's geolocated, right?
Yeah, because it's geolocated. But I was just like, I forgot, how savvy that stuff is, man. But yeah, the whole Instagram feed just completely.
You're just overloaded with like pineapple juice and lay ads.
Luau's and taking these, taking the cruises, whale watching, sunset, yada yada. But it was just, man. So kudos to them, man. Important to get that stuff dialed in and get those people as they're walking off the plane.
Somebody must be buying from it, otherwise they wouldn't do it.
Right.
So we were talking about this, trying to figure out where we met. You and Tim just met a couple weeks ago, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. And then so we believe that you and I, Mark, met through Danny Rudman or at Start Norfolk. Do you remember like what year Start Norfolk? Was it a big one or a small one?
It felt big. It was at, I forget exactly where, like that big empty warehouse.
Okay, so Start Norfolk 3. That was the biggest one. Was Paul Singh there?
Okay.
Did Paul
Yeah,
Singh?
Paul Singh was there.
Okay, so Start Norfolk 3.
So
Tim was there.
Was that 2012?
Yeah, I was there.
2013.
Okay.
So you've met Tim before. It's not maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So because that Sunday night, it was snowing pretty hard when we left.
It was?
That night.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Because I was like, man.
I didn't get hooked up with a team, so I was just there for the opening ceremonies.
Oh, okay.
I didn't do the whole weekend.
Got it. Startup Friday.
Yeah.
Got it. Mark Coster, Startup Friday kind of guy. He's just
I'm just here for the beer.
That was, right. That was like my introduction to Smart Mouth IPA and Mercy.
Is that the one where I had to play maid and clean up?
You were mopping up the floor, and that was a good time. How many kegs were consumed?
I believe 16 were purchased.
And we had to get more, no?
I don't remember. I have not thrown an event like that
since then.
I've grown up. I've matured. I don't want to be. True story. Tom Osha, who's the guy who ran at the time the Innovation Research Park, which was that building, I believe that building. I think now it's like a Centera headquarters or some sort of headquarters. They've actually finally whatever that. And so he's like, you can use this building. We're actually about to lease it out. Do whatever the hell you want. And so, but I remember either I posted it or someone posted a picture of like the keg saran wrapped in the thing. And he's like, do I need to be worried about this? I was just like, nah, man, we're good. You're on a college campus. And he took my word for it. He said everything was good. I miss that guy. He was a real good influence to this region. I don't know if he's still around. I don't think he is.
I don't think he is either. And what was it? The wind down? Was that what it was, Stephen? Unwind. Those are fun events too.
Yeah, those are the glory days. He was a great asset for me. He put a lot of trust in me. I really appreciate him. He's one of the first people that allowed me to do some of the stuff that I wanted to do, because I guess that organization in Baltimore had done something similar to a Start Norfolk, and they had trashed the place. It was like $30,000 in damages. And he's like, look, dude, like this is what just happened. I'm very concerned that this could happen here. I'm like, no, dude, we'll be fine. And thank God we were. But
you wouldn't think like a startup weekend would result in $30,000 in damage, but I guess when you got people staying up all night working on stuff, maybe things get a little nuts. Rowdy. I don't know. There's a couple videos, but okay. So we met at Start Norfolk. That's cool.
Yeah, Mark, was that your first startup type of event, or were you always in the startup scene at that point?
I was not. I went to Hatch a number of times. Thanks, Zach, for all your work there. But I moved to this area in 2009. I grew up outside Chicago, went to UVA, and then was up in DC for a couple of years doing strategy consulting stuff. And I moved down and started working for PRA Group. And just looking around with my background and what I was looking to do, I always thought, hey, if I'm going to stay down here long term, and my wife's from Chesapeake, so that's what brought us down here, I'm probably going to have to do something on my own, just to realize my career ambitions and keep myself entertained and excited about what I'm doing. And so that's when I started attending the startup stuff. My brother had done one in DC, and he actually ended up winning the one in DC that he went to. And so that's when I thought, hey, I'll just check this out, and then stayed somewhat connected until I moved out of the area for a bit in 2017. Happy to chat about that. But that's, was on the board of Startwheel with Zach and Oz and David Arias and Paul, I think.
Was I on the board of that?
Were you? I don't know.
No,
I just assumed you were on the board of all that stuff.
Yeah,
I don't remember that, but who knows?
Yeah.
I might have been.
But yeah, all the certainly Paul, David, Chris Shelton was yeah.
It was short lived. They rebooted it again, and it's in great hands now.
We're we're chugging away. We're doing what we can do.
So PRA, big kind of unknown in the area.
Yeah, I mean, and especially at the time, like when we joined, it was public, or when I joined, it was public, and had probably 1,000+ employees. Some of those were spread across the country. They had a call center in Hampton, I think, big one in Norfolk, but then they had some in Kansas and other places. But yeah, publicly traded business. And from 2009, I left in 2017. So they grew a ton. I mean, you think about global financial crisis and the amount of distressed assets that existed in the country. They were buying up a lot of portfolios, and then when the economy recovered, they'd kind of bought them at very good prices. And then when the economy recovered, people started paying their debts more. So I think at one point, market cap got over $3 billion, and thousands of employees. So it's certainly a place where a lot of people who have worked for big companies, like that's one of the places that they've been.
So $3 billion market cap. That means they had that much in assets that they were trying to get repaid, or how does that work with?
Yeah, I mean, the multiple was based on basically expected future collections. Obviously, it takes into account earnings, and I wasn't an analyst, so I wasn't in the valuation, but a lot of it was about the portfolios that PRA had bought and the expected future collections and future cash flows, in addition to cash flows from that period. So it's an interesting space.
Yeah. So we don't have to talk about that a lot, but I like knowing like that world now and a lot of scammers and spam and stuff like that. Like, how do you even trust getting a message from someone? Like, how do you even know that like PRA is like, oh, this is legit, versus the president in Africa, the prince in Africa who's saying send me $1,500. I joke about that, but like you get these messages and then yours are real, and so if you don't actually do it, you're like you're in trouble. Where the prince in Africa, you're just out $1,500. How can someone know what to do?
Yeah, I mean, at the time that I was there, PRA didn't do a lot of digital collections, and there wasn't quite as much phone spam. I think it seems like, and I'm not, I left in 2017, so I'm definitely not an expert, but when during Trump's first term, they made some FTC changes, I think, that loosened some of the regulations on the way that you're able to communicate with customers. So, I think pretty much everyone has moved towards more text and digital collections, is my understanding. But yeah, it's a really interesting question. I assume they say they know something about you, and that legitimizes them. They can talk about maybe your debt or who your debt is to, but it's a good question. I think a lot more debt is collected these days through structured methods, whether that be bankruptcy filings, debt settlement, right? You get like, hey, put all your debts together and then you can settle it for 60 cents on the dollar. I'm sure, those ads used to be all over the place. And then you've got legal judgments that people are filing. I think that's a larger share of the collections nowadays. Fun world.
I don't know anything about that world. I'm thankful. I'm on both sides of that coin. I don't know anything about it. So
yeah, I mean, it's an important part of the economy. right? If you're able to collect money from someone who owes it, then you're able to lend money to someone who needs it. But I was okay leaving the industry.
And you from there, is that you went to CarMax from there?
Yeah, went to CarMax up in Richmond, worked in their corporate strategy group, looking at how to make operations more efficient, strategic planning, helping the team there stand up their corporate development group, just because I had done that for 4+ years at PRA. Looked at some cool stuff, like what's the future of autonomous vehicles going to do to CarMax, and how do they need to start getting ahead of that. So I got to work on some pretty cool projects while I was there. The team is awesome, and it's like everybody I worked with when I was there is still there, which is a real testament to how they promote from within and the level of talent that they have there. It's really cool.
Yeah. What is it like? I've spent a little time in Richmond, not as much as I probably would like to have, but like they have a pretty decent sized campus in Richmond. I mean, like what is it like to have working for a company that grew into the size that it grew into? Are they pretty well respected in terms of like they're the darlings of the city, or what was it like working there?
Yeah, I mean, it's right next to Cap One, down 288. So like a lot of people are working for one of those two big companies. But it's certainly well respected. It's a great place to work, candidly, just having been there. Even though I was only there for 10 months, I've got a lot of great things to say about it. They do a lot of things the right way. And so I do think it is a very respected employer. They have got like their main campus out west a little bit, and then they've got their downtown tech campus, which was really cool in Shaco.
I had been there for an event. The governor did their Virginia Invest announcement there, so that was my first little taste of that. That's a super cool space.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this old tobacco building or something, just this old brick building that they've made into this really cool tech space. It's like right on a canal. They've got some outdoor space, walk to cool restaurants and coffee shops. So that whole area of Richmond is really cool. And the fact that they were able to get a nice big space and make it what they needed there was great.
Yeah.
Thoughts? I don't know, you haven't been there in a while, but differences between this region and the Richmond region from a startup perspective, from a business perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Paul Nolde recently, so he probably has better perspective on that. And I think in some ways, I think he would say, and probably has on your show, that this region has a lot of strengths that maybe Richmond might not match. I think, they had NRV there, which was a nice established investment source, a little closer to UVA and Charlottesville and that community. So definitely some differences. More, I think government stuff down here, although obviously they're the capital of the state. So I was pretty focused in my 10 months there on what I was doing with CarMax and getting my family settled and everything. So maybe didn't participate as much in the startup stuff up there as I was down here before leaving.
All right. Well, that's on me asking a bad question. How dare me?
Just showing my ignorance. We've got a lot more of that coming up.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a friendly competition. I don't even know if it's competition is the word, but it seems it's friendly between Richmond and the Hampton Roads area, and it's always interesting to see people's take on which one is stronger between the two.
Yeah, I mean, either way, they're just so differentiated from DC. Sure. I think it makes sense to band together, and
that's why I don't really think it's a ton of competition, just because it is just a short drive, as we know, up and down 64, and founders are willing to make that happen. If they can meet with investors up there or vice versa, founders are more than happy to do that. So it's more collaboration than cooperation, or than competition.
Yeah, agreed.
Search funds. What is a search fund?
Yeah, so search funds have been around now for 40 years. Stanford is like the gold standard for tracking these things, and that's where the whole thing started. the traditional search fund is getting a person who's fresh out of an MBA program, who's got theoretically some business background, some real life working experience, plus that MBA education, and they go find a small business, or maybe not that small, to buy, and they're traditionally backed by investors before they start searching. So that's how it got started. Is there was a stable of investors who would invest in this theoretically talented person, and they'd go out and buy a business with their backing, get carry in the business, and would run it and make it better. Is kind of how the model works. So over the last 40 years, Stanford's pulled together a ton of data. A lot of other top business schools have programs now where they're offering classes and doing conferences, and the asset classes, I think it's returned an average of a 35% IRR. So it's something that's definitely growing in popularity, and I think becoming a lot more common for people, whether they're in top MBA programs or not. There's been different iterations of it, and what before was just called like buying a small business is now this like sexy entrepreneurship through acquisition title. But I do think it's a really awesome way to pursue entrepreneurship, maybe de-risk a little bit in that you're buying a business that already has traction, and is likely profitable, and then you can grow it. So that's why I was excited to pursue it. I'm doing a bit of a different model, and happy to kind of talk through the different models that exist and why I'm doing the one that I'm doing. But as I mentioned, like I always thought living down here, I'd want to do something on my own, and this is the way to use my decades plus of M&A experience to kind of do it for myself. So it's a mixing that M&A and operating experience for me.
So what's your message to founders right now that are listening? We typically have founders that listen to the show. Yeah, what's your pitch to them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to move on from running a company, and some people sell to private equity, some people transition it to their employees or their family if they're in the business and interested in running it. But I think a lot of folks don't have necessarily a plan on how they're going to move on from running and owning a business. And, there's a lot of different situations when people might want to contemplate that. Either they're aging out and they want to retire, or they go through a divorce or a health issue, or they're, them and their business partner aren't getting along the same way that they were. So when people get into that situation and they don't necessarily have a plan set, or even if they're thinking about that situation over the next 1, 3, 5 years, that's a time when looking for the right transition for people is important. And if some people aren't going to want to sell to private equity or sell to a strategic because they're worried about their legacy, they're worried about their employees, they're worried about the jobs in their community. And I'm looking specifically locally and for businesses that I can be really hands-on and operate. And I'm excited about the possibility for this method in this region. So if a business owner is thinking about transitioning at some point in the near or intermediate term, and they want to have a conversation with someone who is interested in being a steward of that legacy and being helping create a place where their employees can continue to grow their careers, then I might be the exact right partner for them. Or if not, I've talked to a lot of other folks that live in this area that want to do this kind of thing, who may have a slightly different skill set than I do. And I'd be happy to put them in touch with them too, and help that operator figure out how to structure it and fund it. But I think one thing that differentiates me from maybe some other buyers is I'm flexible on terms. So sometimes people aren't ready to go 100%. They want to stay involved. They have the opportunity maybe to roll over some equity and keep a portion of the business, stay on the board, stay in touch with the business while maybe not worrying about the day-to-day and making payroll and all those things that are stressors for people operating a business. So that's one place where I would think it would differentiate, in addition to just being a local operator that's excited about continuing to grow business this year.
Yeah, I dig that in the sense of, I mean, because our market is still pretty new and growing. So, like, in a what we talked about before over lunch a while back, Mark, was that yeah, where companies can get their pre-seed, seed, and up to Series A, but then to really scale beyond that, it takes someone with some outside experience. That's something you bring to the table, something you were able to experience with CarMax, and it takes a new set of talent in order to get there. Where I see the attractiveness that you would provide in doing something like that, and
And I got a lot of great experience working for Lori Stacy at Trader Interactive and the great team there during our private equity ownership cycle. And then, so I've had that operating seat in addition to my previous experience that we talked about. And then after that, went to work for a private equity firm that's based up in Boston on their operating team. So I had the experience of working with and looking at and sitting in board meetings of a number of different portfolio companies. So, having been on both the operating side of a private equity backed company as well as working within a private equity firm, I think that gave me a unique perspective around what it takes to optimize a business. Trend spotting is one thing that when you're operating within one company is really, really hard to do. So having that kind of broader portfolio experience was great for me, and I hope to apply some of those lessons to a business that I buy.
Trader was acquired.
Trader was acquired, so it was part of Dominion, and that.
Yeah, I knew that.
Everything that they built there, and by the way, like what a legacy that business has had.
Well, yeah. So, like, was it like RV Trader and all that stuff? Is that what Trader is? So
that's Trader Interactive. Yeah, there was like broader Trader and Landmark and New Ventures, and
it's crazy. Like, we don't give enough credit for that building, right?
100%.
And it's like now, I remember talking to Joe Fuller. I don't know if you know who that is, but he was a CIO of Dominion. Yeah, I remember we'd have lunch, breakfast, and this is like 2012, 2013, and he's talking about this. And he's like, yeah, numbers right now at 6%. We have lunch again 3 months later. He's like, they're at 8%. And then, 6 months later, it's like 14%. And obviously now it's probably like 90%. But it's just, they were so on the forefront of that. And I don't know, like, I just always felt like the community didn't give them the credit that they were due and should have gotten. And, the executives behind that basically created the Weather Channel, sold, public data, skinned it a little bit for billions of dollars. Now you see homes.com ads just crushing it at the Super Bowl. It's like, yo, guess where that started? Right here,
Yeah.
And it's just, what is that? 201 Granby Street, I think, something like that. Like,
yeah. And before that, it was, it existed
across the street. They started,
right?
Didn't they start Auto Trader with Cox or something? Like, it's just crazy to think that story of what they've been able to do with thousands of employees. Like, that's such a powerful message. If I was someone being like, yo, like, should I go to an area like that? It's like, well, here's what's happened. This company did this and was acquired for billions of dollars. And that's a pretty damn cool thing. And Lori had just recently retired, I believe, right? Did I see that?
She did. Yeah. We sold the business in the final part of the business. We sold it in two parts to Car Sales in Australia. And we sold it in October 22, maybe. And she retired about a year later.
Did they ever announce how much it was acquired for?
It's a public company, so it was about $2 billion. And Goldman and Eurazeo, I think, bought it for $680 million in 2017 as a carve out. So I think it's like wealth creation that went through that whole Landmark Trader Dominion piece, but then also the talent that they brought to the area. You've got a lot of folks who were able to retire off of what they made. You mentioned Weather Channel, and you've got Weather Channel, Boats Group, just Trader Interactive. Like, there's a bunch of different properties that sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. But then they also, like, through their New Ventures program, brought a bunch of fresh MBAs down here who had been in the area for decades, just doing really cool stuff. So Obviously, I'm very appreciative of what they did, because it allowed me to have a pretty unique opportunity down here, and work through that private equity ownership cycle. But it's smart people can create amazing things anywhere. I think that just shows that.
Yeah, I mean, they were always good friends to us. Learned so much from them. They were never easy on me either. Like, they always made me fight for what I had to get. And
Joe was always really good. Yeah, I mean, he was always super accessible. He attended a lot of events.
It's interesting, like he helped me, like, because they were, I guess, a partner in a lot of what we did. And he'd be like, look, this is what we're looking for. You need to craft this so that it makes sense. And one of the funniest stories I remember, I was like, well, why do you even care that we're here? He's like, well, when your businesses go out of business, we're going to take the talent, and it cost us like $20,000 a person to acquire them. And he's like, if we can get that for a fraction of the cost and get people to see us from a marketing perspective, or get us in front of some of these individuals that we would like to hire when their business doesn't make the cut, we want to be first in line to be able to see that. And it makes so much sense. But to have a partner like that, to have a business to, like, they literally were across the street.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have to do that. I mean, there's plenty of businesses that could have done, could have helped us, back in the day too, but they didn't. But Dominion did, and I always was very, very thankful for them, and learned a ton from them, and would have nothing but positive words to say about all of them. Like, super, super smart guys.
Yeah. And before remote was a big thing, if you got someone to move down here and start working for your company, the retention was amazing, right? Because if you have a job at a company that pays, a fair wage, and you get to do big things, like, there weren't a million different options for that, especially in the technology world. So I think they got a lot of benefit out of grabbing some folks and growing their careers over, a long period of time.
And the views were nice out there too.
Correct. Yeah, they had that conference space at the top floor.
I think that's probably some of the best views around. 100%.
Yeah, the Wells Fargo building, is that what it is? The one right across from Scope? That one has good views too, different perspectives.
Yeah.
But I think that's a thing. And Mark, with you, Mark, is like, what startups, what got you here isn't going to get you there. And we need help getting companies to there. And so few are able to understand that and figure out what it is that is needed.
Correct.
And it's just super frustrating to me.
Yeah. And the venture capital landscape has changed too, right? Like, before, when maybe you could get some cash flow and keep things going, like, you're either going to have a big down round, or you're just not going to be able to get the cash. And so I think that, there was that big pivot to profitability that happened, when was it, 2022? Yeah. And that hit startups too. And so I think there's probably a lot of businesses who were able to raise some early funding, but then had to pivot to bootstrapping it and scraping by with whatever profitability they can manage. And, like, those might not be bad businesses, but they're not getting $3 million to go invest in growth anymore, and that's a different business to manage too.
Yeah.
Right.
So is that the opportunity that you see? Is you have a company that, hey man, rather than taking a down round, or I know that raising my next round is going to be super, super challenging, and it's going to be a down round, that, hey, maybe I just need to let this thing, take it to the next step, as opposed to going out of business.
Yeah. I think that is an opportunity, both for me and for a potential owner transitioning, right? Like, I'm not expecting to go in and have everything be preset and ready for growth. I'm expecting to have to go in and work with the team and, change things a little bit to get to where the business has potential to go. So I think, again, some people got into the game thinking, hey, I'm going to raise venture capital, I'm going to go crazy, and then I'm going to sell it for a ton of money down the road. And after you're 10 years in and you haven't gotten there, maybe you're interested in a new challenge. And so that's definitely an opportunity where I'd be willing to have that conversation and say, hey, maybe I'm the right person to help take this business to the next level.
One thing that I've always thought, in kind of the same vein of what you're saying, is, they get into it because they want to change this problem, but they don't necessarily know a lot of the things that they're supposed to do in between. And so they don't have those skill sets. And I think oftentimes, I guess you see this a lot in blue collars. You get these guys that are like really good at fixing something, really good plumbers, really good at fixing, something around your house. But when and they might make, several $1,000,000 a year, but they really don't know how. And they really don't have a process in place. And it's amazing to me that it's like, well, like, how did you get this far when you don't even know who your client is? You don't even know, like, what area are you supposed to, like, you're going in so many different places. It's just wild. And so to me, it's like, okay, like, this is a resource. Like, you are a resource to put that thing that they've gotten, you got their baby pretty far. And it's like, hey, like, I appreciate that. Your legacy is going to be in good hands because the things that you suck at are the things that I'm amazing at. And we're going to put, it's a laughing matter, but I mean, really it's all the time.
Yeah. I like to think that I can help. But I think it's, I have an immense respect for people who have created something from nothing. And the fact that they maybe have those business practices in place that are still making an amazing living for them and their family just because they have provided a great service for a long period of time, it is an amazing thing. But yeah, I do think my experience is probably a bit of a different experience. And maybe some of my learnings paired with the business that's already been built can help take it to the next level. And it's not new in this area. I'm doing it full time right now and looking for a business to buy. But you look at like what Matt Malone has done at Groundworks. They just got investment from KKR within the last couple of years. And I don't know if this number is right, but like Grata says they're at $1 billion in revenue. I don't know if that's right, but I know they're big, and they're employing a ton of people. And what is it? He bought, JES and their technology, and then started buying up all these other businesses, and now has created this company that is huge and is, I think all their execs are local and either have grown with the business or came from outside and now live here. So, that's just one example of a few where people are pursuing this. And, obviously private equity across the country is doing this with HVAC contractors and others. But I do think it's an interesting growth lever for Hampton Roads and the 757 because these small businesses do exist. And it's a way to continue to grow those and provide new opportunities for jobs and new and different employment for people.
I feel like we talked about this with Chris Bushy of Buffalo. That's why we take notes, Zach. Buffalo Express Franchise Consulting. But he called it, you've heard of like habit stacking? He called it like franchise stacking, where he's like, a lot of these franchises are buying or getting or starting or running similar businesses, kind of like the Buzz franchise guys, where it's the same customer but different business. So it's like, okay, like what are things around a house? Okay, so like you got your lawn mowing, you got your cleaning, you got your pest control, you got your HVAC, and so all of those are all under one umbrella, or like a fitness type of thing as well, which is what he's been doing. And so it's interesting that like we don't think about those things, but we're starting to see. You just talked about Groundworks. It's that exact same model of stacking. And the conversation started because Tim asked the question about like, do you have to own 5 Jimmy Johns to make a good living? Right. And he's like, well, there's this thing called franchise. I think didn't he say he created that term, Tim?
I'm not sure if he said that or not.
But it's just interesting how here we are 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
You're saying the same thing. And, you're going to be in 5 years, you're going to be the next Groundworks. So we're excited to see it.
That'd be a great outcome. I think like when I think about corporate development, which for folks who aren't familiar with that term, it's basically doing mergers and acquisitions for a strategic platform business. There's a few key ways to grow through M&A, and it kind of aligns with that franchise stacking idea. You can either go to new markets, right? So Groundworks has gone to different markets across the country and bought up those foundation repair businesses. And so same product, new customer base, or you can do product expansion, which is same customer base, new products, which is what you're talking about, right? homeowners need a bunch of different services, so you can ideally market into those same customers with your different services. Now there's some debate about how realistic it is to be able to get those synergies. And then there's industry consolidation where you're just buying up people doing the same thing in the same region, and you get economies of scale, and maybe you get some more pricing power and things like that. So all that is something that can happen through ETA or search funds. Those roll-ups are pretty popular. Or you can just buy one business and try and grow it organically. And that can still result in a really awesome outcome.
Chris, Mark, we talked to many founders, and one of the questions I always ask them is having the end in mind, asking what their exit strategy is when they first going into this. Popular answer is always acquisition of some kind. You, as someone who is looking to acquire, what are some of the things that you look for first that these founders should have in mind as they're building their business?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly being in private equity, like, it has really informed that experience. And we focused on B2B vertical SaaS. So it's there's some nuances to that. But I think what you're looking for is a solid foundation, an underwritable foundation, and then areas for growth, right? You want limited downside with maximum upside. So a lot of times that will relate to, hey, are your financial reporting systems timely and accurate, and can you get the data that you need? Is the team that's in place the right team to keep the business operating? Is your go-to-market model repeatable? Right. So, and a lot of times in the businesses that I'm going to be looking at, they might not even have a go-to-market motion. So for me, that's not really a requirement. And a lot of these aren't requirements. I'm hoping to add those aspects to add value to the business. But that's really what it comes down to, is how can you prove to the buyer that you are a solid platform for growth? And that means having the right foundation, proof of that, right? You don't want to show that, okay, I was here, and all of a sudden I jumped here 1 year. That's not necessarily the right time to sell, because people may be thinking that's a blip, versus, you show a nice trajectory or a linear trajectory. That becomes much easier to underwrite. And a lot of people are going to be using debt to do that. So the banks love the underwritability too. And, you want to not have a situation where if you leave the business and a person comes in, they're worried about the business going under. So whether that's having the right team in place so that they can keep the lights on day to day, and someone like me can focus on business transformation and growth, or having like repeat stable customers. People love recurring revenue because they don't have to go out and find a new customer every single day to make sure the business is doing okay. They can rely on customers that already have a working relationship with them. Those are the things that people are looking for.
Yeah. And one of the things that I tell the founders, like, hey, it's not too early to start your data room. Start your data room. And from what I'm hearing from you is like, hey, whether you secured the funding or didn't, having that data room and keeping that up to date where everything's all in one place. So you never know when someone's going to knock on your door or get an email from whoever. That stuff is always ready to go, so that you can just give access to the person that wants to take a look at it.
100%. Sale processes are not easy. They require a bunch of digging for data. And if you've got solid, dependable, repeatable data processes, then you're going to be in a better place. I would say even more importantly than the exit, it's important for running your business. Because if you're not getting the right data to make decisions, then you're making decisions based on your gut or something else. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you can take your business in a direction that it shouldn't have been going, where if you had the right data, you could have potentially made a better decision. So I think having that stuff is critical, both for daily operation as well as for exit prep.
Yeah, I call that looking in the mirror and being honest with what you see.
Exactly.
Well, and it's amazing if you do all the right things all along, you're probably not in such a dire position as if you didn't do those things to begin with.
Yeah. And if you set up the foundation early, then you're saving yourself a lot of time later on, because as you get bigger, it's only going to get harder to start to
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
make everything make sense.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, like, start documenting, because when you actually want to go back and figure out what you did, it's going to be really damn hard.
Yeah.
It's just going to take time, and you're not going to want to do that, because that's really, I mean, that's, busy work, that's admin work. But if you do, oh, I did this here, and you just, write it down, and then you have a list of all the things. It's like, imagine the person, I think about this from like a running perspective, the first person who ever was training for a marathon. I guess he died, but let's just say that he didn't, because that's the story of how it happened. But let's say he just was like, oh, I'm gonna do 12 weeks, I'm gonna go, and he didn't document any of that stuff. For him, from memory, to have to remember what he did on each of those runs and all, like, it's incredibly difficult. Now imagine business over a year.
Right.
It's like,
and if you're doing it right, you're growing somewhat exponentially. So it's never going to slow down for you to catch up to have the documentation in place to be ever. I mean, it's just, and I know, dude, I'm guilty as charged for that. I'm like, oh, when things slow down, I'll be able to catch up with all that. And it's just, the reality of it is, if you're doing it right, it's not going to slow down.
And
you also
I think we've all been. No, go ahead, Zach.
It's just, you can use it as your mirror effect too, right? Where you're like, okay, like, did this work? Did this not? Like, trying this thing, like, it could just be like, oh, I have a social media campaign, and I'm uploading stuff to YouTube, and it's like, okay, like, is this the right time? Is that, like, and just be changing a bunch of things to see which ones are moving the needle a little bit. Is it a thumbnail? Is it the length of the video? Is it the whatever it might be? Just being like, but being honest with yourself, I think, is the hardest thing, is because people are like, oh no, this is fine. It's like, you're lying to yourself. Like, look in the mirror, and what you see, like, make sure it's not a lie.
Yeah. I mean, doing things just to do them versus doing things for impact, right? If you're not measuring and then iterating, doubling down on the things that are working and not doing again the things that aren't working, you can say that you're doing work, but you're not creating impact. So that's a huge thing. And I think we've all been in situations too, as employees, where we're at a bigger company and somebody new comes in and says, let's try this. And you get everyone who's been there for a little bit rolling their eyes and you're like, we already tried that. But if you didn't document why you made the decision to stop doing it and have proof for that, then it's hard to say no. Especially if it's someone higher up telling you to do it.
How many decisions do you think a founder or a founding team make in any given day? I mean, it's just way too many. If you don't document,
depends on how serious they
are.
It
out. Yeah. Yeah.
When we used to put on a bunch of events, actually everything, Tim, you've probably seen this, Mark, you might have too. Like, we had these posters at Hatch, in kind of the team office, and it would be like, here are all the steps for the playbooks.
Yep.
Right. And it's like, we'd be sitting there having like our little powwow, and it'd be like, why hasn't this happened? Like, why hasn't someone covered this yet? Oh, let's look. Scroll down, step 47. Oh, outreach to local media to do story. Oh, no one did step 47. Well, why do you think you didn't get any media? Because you need to be proactive in that situation. So, like, you have to do it. You just, like, and it's not, it has to be. You can't just expect something to happen because it happened once before. It's like, no, you have to be in control of that. You have to be proactive in that situation. And sure, it can be tedious to put together, but if you don't do it, like, it's a process that is necessary if you want to succeed and to really know where you are in your business.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair to people who maybe aren't as process oriented, there's sometimes when you can over process things and you're doing the same thing where you're not creating an impact, you're just doing work. I think it's about being diligent about the things that need process and measuring, and doing that and not doing the other stuff, which is, sometimes that's a hard decision to make.
On the flip side, is there, and some of this may seem obvious, but I think the founders need to hear it, especially from someone like you, any immediate red flags that you see that just kills the deal instantly?
Yeah. I think, again, like, if you don't have any redundancy in the business, and if one person leaves, that key man risk is super dangerous. Not having a clear view of your financials is tough. if you can't explain your financials, that's tough. Yeah, there's a lot of different things. If you're not keeping customers, that's a big thing for me, especially having spent the last 7 years in
Yeah.
technology. Getting customers is hard. Everybody knows that, in no matter what industry you're in, and it's much easier to grow an existing base. So if you're losing customers, what are you doing that's causing your customers to go somewhere else? And is that something that you can fix while also trying to get more new customers? So that's a red flag. There's just a lot of things that show up in the data that represent what's actually happening in the business. And I find a lot of people talk about the potential of their business, but if the potential doesn't match the data, then it doesn't really matter. Because then at that point you're making a venture bet on,
Yeah.
a hope and a dream. And like I give founders all the credit in the world if they take a hope and a dream and make it into something, but that's not the right time to sell your business, because you're not going to get credit for what hasn't been proven.
The lifetime duration of a customer and the lifetime value of a customer. I mean, it's just, gosh, it's so important.
Yeah.
That,
those unit metrics are huge.
How many subscriptions have you not changed?
Yeah.
Like, when was the last time you canceled your Netflix account? They got you forever. They're raising don't tell me you canceled Netflix, Tim.
No. I'm saying that even beyond that, most people couldn't even tell you how much a Prime membership costs or how much they even pay a month for Netflix. That's just, they have no idea.
They need that Rocket app that'll tell you, which, by the way, have you ever seen that commercial? It's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to cancel subscriptions. By the way, it's a subscription in itself. That thing just always makes me laugh. I'm just like, what's it called? Rocket Money? I don't know.
I don't know, but yeah, your product is super sticky when you don't even know how much you're even paying for it.
Yeah. This has been crazy. I have a couple like real quick things that I'd like to ask before we get to the end.
Is this like a flash round? Do I have to answer in like 2 seconds and then you ask another question, or is this?
I don't know. I got like a couple of things.
All right.
Okay, so you went to UVA. Were you a basketball fan?
I am. I'm an everything sports fan.
So Tony,
I met my wife at ESPN.
You did?
That tells you. Yeah, we were
worked
both
at ESPN?
working. Yeah, between third and fourth year at UVA. Normal people would call it junior and senior year.
Yeah.
That's right. You people speak like that.
This is being recorded, so I have to do it the right way and say third and fourth year.
Got it. Okay, so Tony Bennett retiring. I mean, disappointing because of NIL and like the way all that's going on. Just general thoughts on that?
Yeah. I first of all just have so much respect for the way he built the program and the kind of man he is, having followed the team very closely since he joined. But I also totally get it, and I'll never have any issue with someone doing what's best for them and their family, right? Whether that's leaving a job or whatever it is, you always have to do what's right for you and your family. But I do think we were it was an uphill slog for the last couple of years, and it felt like we started to get some recruiting momentum. But that system, it's just tough in the transfer era because people don't really become effective until they're 2 years in. And if they're not effective year one, maybe they transfer out and then you've kind of lost all the progress. So I think Ron Sanchez has done a good job this year. I just don't know how effective that system is in this new landscape and if we need to reset the system generally. But, I'm not Carla Williams, so that someone else will have to make that decision.
Did you cry when you were a 16 seed or a 1 seed losing to a 16 seed?
So it was a late game.
I know.
And I was staying up for it, and I turned it off with like 10 minutes left because I emotionally couldn't handle it. And then I was like, well, maybe we came back. And so I turned it on with 2 minutes left, and I got very sad. I don't think I cried about it, but it was not a good moment.
Oh, it was a great moment. And now you guys aren't the only team, because I believe Purdue was a 1 seed too that lost a few years ago.
That's it. And my sister went to Purdue.
Wow.
So that we have something to commiserate about.
There you go. And you guys won the title the next year, so I mean, it was a pretty good story there.
That's right. Nobody cares anymore because we won the title. If we hadn't, then it would. I mean, we still talk about, and I don't I wasn't even a UVA fan at the time, but the loss to Chaminade when, however long ago that was. I think Ralph Sampson was there when that happened. Like,
Is that the
people
Hawaii
were still
school?
talking about that. I think so.
Tim,
Isn't
did
it
you see
that
it?
like preseason tournament?
Yeah, in Maui, right? Did you
I
get
don't know
asked for that,
exactly
Tim?
where it is.
For Chaminade? Okay.
See,
Yeah,
I grew
no
up
idea.
outside Chicago and went to UVA in '03, so I was pretty ignorant to the history prior to that.
Is deep dish pizza lasagna?
No, it's
Is that
it's
an
pizza.
argument?
The crust, I think the crust makes it pizza, but it's phenomenal. And local plug, Windy City's actually pretty decent Chicago deep dish. They do it the right way.
One of the
Speaking
things that Mark and I were able to determine, though, is that, and Mark, I have to give you the credit for this, but you had made mention of like some of the best barbecue places are found in strip malls.
It's moving here. It was such a weird phenomenon. Like, there's great restaurants in strip malls, like next to local insurance people. It's insane to me. Where did we go to? County Grill
Yeah.
in Yorktown, and then like one of the first nice restaurants I went to was Eurasia, and which is delicious. And it's like, next to a bunch of like a flower shop or something. Who knows? Half of Eurasia is a shop.
What's your problem with strip malls? I mean,
But I don't have one. It was just a weird phenomenon
Yeah.
to me coming from Chicago.
Tim, is at that time while we're talking about food?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, because it is something that I didn't notice. But like now that we're talking about food, you bring someone from Chicago to come and visit. Yeah, does Hampton Roads have a food of our area, or what is the go-to restaurant that they have to visit before going back?
I always say Chicks, just because it's on the water and it's a local, it's a legend. So that's where I typically bring people. Is you just get that like coastal experience. But I don't think there's a food, like, even seafood you can't really say is ours. So I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that that's a really, really interesting point. That like really the food of our region really is the coastal water view dining experience. We have so much water view and coastline around here that that maybe that is the brand that we should be focused on, and is the views versus the food itself.
I went to Chicks for the first time a few months ago. Tim, have you been there?
Wait,
I've not.
Not the oceanfront one, right? The shore drive one.
Yes.
Yeah, first time.
Yeah, dude. Like,
That's insane.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I don't. I think I might have been there once, but it's just
it's
it's
monster.
always packed, right?
I went for some powwow. I don't know why. That's the second time I've said that phrase. Never say that. But I was like, wow, this is a really cool bar. It's just not close. So it's an Uber ride. And so that's the challenge.
If you do it right.
Start Norfolk 3 style. You know what I'm saying? Someone said the back deck a few weeks ago. We've gotten a lot of those, like, what's the other one called? The porch around there. Like, we're getting,
Same.
I'd say the last 6 months have been a theme around that. Some people talk about the orange crush, the white sauce, strip mall barbecue.
The white sauce is unique to this area, but I wouldn't recommend telling people about it. For people who didn't grow up with it, it's terrible. It's really bad.
Oh, Lord.
And it's astounding that people around here like it.
It's good, man.
I'm gonna get some hate mail for that, but
As you should. What's something we haven't what's something we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think just I hope that ETA can be entrepreneurship through acquisition can be a huge lever of growth for this area. And if anyone's interested in it, either doing it themselves, because you can read books like Buy Then Build or the HBR Guide to Buying Businesses, but it really can be more accessible than people think. You know, I'm not sitting on millions of dollars and can just go buy it whatever I want. There's ways to do it where you can buy a business successfully without much of a down payment. So I think it could be a really cool lever for this area to grow. Again, you've seen Groundworks, you've seen guys like Taylor Grand, Owen Griffin, like they're doing versions of it. And so if you're interested, either doing it as an operator and buying a business yourself, if you're a business owner looking to transition, or if you're an investor who's interested in this asset class generally, would love to have a conversation. And you know, happy to connect people. Maybe I'm not the right fit, and that's totally fine. And I would get a bunch of joy from connecting people to help facilitate it for others too.
Sounds like a great place to wrap up based on that.
All right, this is where we do the salute thing, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Thanks
Like,
for
comment,
watching.
subscribe, all that good stuff.
See you next week.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Peace.